Hey, Matthew. Hi, Nick. Hey, Amanda.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. How's it going? You made it Tuesday. That is something.
I'm surprised myself.
Very good. Yes. But we did it. I feel like it's already a Thursday on my book. Yeah. Is it very like humid where you all are? It's so humid where I am. Yeah, yeah. Amanda, you're kind of near me, St. Louis-ish.
Yeah, it is horrible.
It is like soup. I am glad I don't have a pet, so I don't have to walk it outside. I mean, I'm not glad I don't have a pet. I want a pet, but I don't have to do a walk in the morning. Oh, yes. Hi, Stacy. How are you? Hello, hello. Maybe she's just sitting in. Yes. Nick, long time no see. Oh, hi, Stacy.
Sorry.
Nice to meet you.
Nice. Hi there. I'm sorry. I'm moving from one place to another, so forgive me.
You don't have to keep your camera on. I just haven't seen you face to face yet. So
Yeah,
take
we met
time.
2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
actually.
Yes, I remember early June. Yeah. Just not.
Yes. So here I am. I am
Wonderful.
fine, and it is very hot and humid,
Yeah.
too much so for human beings. My daughter works at camp, so she's outside all day. So she's so exhausted when she gets home just because the heat takes it all out of her.
Oh my gosh. We need so many electrolytes. Thank goodness for the liquid IV,
Yeah.
multi-purpose for hangover and humid days. Yes. That's what I drink. I drink that stuff a lot when it's so hot. I was at a wedding this weekend and they did serve some drink with salt around the rim. It wasn't a margarita. And I was like, this was such a good idea because people will pass out. They're just like throwing salt on. It was outside. Yeah. Yes. But let's go around. I want to hear your headlines from the last week. And then we're coming to the end of June. So I think it's good to talk through the KPIs and where you are so far. And we are having our contest for June. It has to do with increasing conversion. So today I want to start talking about couple strategies on overcoming objections, but really dive into like the workshop of it all next week. So that is the plan for today. Um, and I was gonna ask, not that you have to commit, but like, is anyone off next week? Like you're not gonna be here next week that you know for sure? Amanda, maybe.
I'm pretty much day to day at this point, so I
Okay,
may or may
you
not
might.
be here.
Yes, you're
I'm
going.
planning on being here, but I don't know for sure.
Got it. You're going on leave zone, so makes sense. Okay. No, I just want to hear, yeah, I want to hear where everyone's at and throw some strategies at you and then give you a week to implement and then do some more practicing on hearing how it went throughout this coming week and then more practicing in a workshop style next week. So, uh, Nick, you have not been here in a while. I'm dying to hear your updates. Why don't you let us know how it's going in the world of Blue Square?
Sure thing. Yeah. Do you want me to share my KPI sheet as well?
Yeah, that would be great if you've got them.
Sure.
Oh, my otter is not in here. Let me get it in here while you share. What the heck? Okay, now it will be.
And these are correct, but yeah, just kind of chugging through summer at this point. Uh, it's kind of a hit
Oh,
or miss.
look at
Like
that.
with
122.
yeah, and they reach out, but and every time I go to call them, it just doesn't really go through. So it's that first initial like it's that time between when they reach out and when I reach out to them. Might need to be a little bit shorter on that. So definitely more on top of it, but
Okay.
trying to get as many of them booked as possible with the clinicians that we have available. Most of the licensed clinicians have already been booked, and now it's just kind of pre-licensed as well as the two interns, and then we had a new clinician join on, so trying to kind of talk about her experience without actually having any like website uh, information for them to see, and that's kind of been difficult. So just and then also it's a console call, which people tend to like more instead of the full intake, right? But so that's kind of helped in my favor. But other than that, just yeah, just going through with that.
Okay, okay. So what did you mean about the consult call versus did you mean with you or with the therapist? I just didn't
Yeah,
follow.
of course. Sorry about that. So usually like right, you have that first intake call with the
Mhm.
client coordinator, me, right? And then afterwards, our practice has terminology like a console call is like that 15-minute free charge just to get a good feel. Otherwise, and then the other one that we say is like a full intake appointment, and that's the one that's like the full hour, 908 something. And that's just to say that the two are different. One's billed, one's not. Um, and sometimes people call in and they prefer the 15-minute, and you kind of have to talk them into the full intake appointment because at the end of the day it's going to be a good fit. It would just be a waste of a week of that appointment not being filled with the client. And it's good with the new clinician because you're able to offer that 15-minute phone call, because that's kind of our practice's like onboarding procedure, is to have that first initial consult call before they have their intake appointment. So it's good that way because it's kind of easier to sell them to the client without any like expertise behind them, or like a detailed psych today profile, or the license, things like that.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I didn't know that your practice offered that 15-minute session with a therapist. Yeah. Okay. And so but in your sheet here, the 45 intakes booked, those are for the full intake session, right? Or are some of those for the 15-minute? I was just curious. Oh, maybe your internet is poor. Mine. You're frozen, Nick. Oh, Aisha's coming in. We lost you. Okay, we will come back to that question. Ah, okay. Nick, can you? Nope. No, yes. Nope. Can you hear us? Aisha was here and then she popped out. Zoom is so weird. Yesterday I was in a call
Oh,
that
there
was.
we go.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
Sorry about that. This meeting runs kind of the same time as our team like practice meeting, so all the clinicians are on their own meeting right now.
Oh, okay. Got it. So that is messing up the bandwidth. I was gonna say I didn't know that your practice did the 15-minute. When you track in the KPIs intakes booked, are those all the full intake or are some of those the 15-minute?
Some of those are the 15-minute because I mean in the numbers I consider it to be that, because once they have that first.
Ah, it froze again. Hi, Aisha. Welcome. Okay, we will come back to you, Nick. We must come back. We will come back. Yes. Okay. Cool. How about Aisha or Amanda? Do you want to go next with your updates?
I can go.
Okay. Yes.
All right. So we had a really good week last week. We got 34 new inquiries. So we're up to 81 total inquiries, and then 54 actual booked sessions. So that was super impressive. I was excited about that last week. We were busy, 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 which is amazing. And then of those 54, 51 of them have actually completed their first session. So we are on good
Good.
ground this month. So I'm super excited about that, and have only lost 6 so far. So we're
That
kind
is
of cleaning up the wait list. So don't have anyone on there as of now. Um, but yeah, just keep rolling with our new change. It's working out. And this week I
Yeah.
am training my replace well, not replacement, but who's going to cover for me while I'm out. So I'm kind of busy with that. But otherwise, yeah, it's really just she's listening to my calls and kind of going through our process and learning that and everything. But we are still we had a really good day yesterday as well. So hopefully by the end of the month we'll keep the trajectory going.
You are certainly like going on leave with a bang. Like,
Yeah.
you're certainly leaving on a high note if you're taking a maternity leave, a hiatus. But there must be very sad that you're going now. This is
I-
really well done. You're laying the groundwork for the next person to come to cover.
yeah.
Really awesome. So there was a change on the website with where the booking link was, right?
Hmm.
And then
Yep.
also another thing it looks like is that they're qualified leads or qualified prospects, which means they're a good fit. Your practice can serve them. Because if you got
Yes.
a ton of leads that were like calling in for eating disorder, for example, I don't know if you serve eating disorder, but if you have no one who works with that population, then what good are all the incoming calls, right?
Right.
So that sounds like they're also well suited for your practice.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely getting much more quality leads instead of the people that are, just reaching out to anyone and everyone and whoever calls them back first is the winner. So, um we
Mhm.
definitely have the people that are ready to book as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And what is your turnaround time do you answer the phones live or how quickly do you call them back once they inquire?
Well, that's the thing, like with this new change, when they schedule the calls, now my day is very full, so I try to answer as many live calls as possible, or get back to them within I try 4 hours. That has not been happening lately, but with at least within a business day. So that's kind of, I guess, the caveat to this is like when you get a lot of scheduled calls, then that fills up your day and it's harder to keep up with the ones that are still kind of open and pending. Um,
Right.
yeah, so trying to find what the best way to combat that is, but yeah.
Yeah, that is the catch 22. Is if
Yep.
you're scheduling the intake call, I call it the welcome call, some people call it the intake call. What if you're scheduling that, then like when the calls are coming in, if you're the only person, those do go to voicemail, right? Or those,
Yep.
yeah. But it all boils down to at the end, if there's a trade-off there, like are the numbers robust? Like are you, and it looks like the percentage is working out really well.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
May
And
I
so
ask?
it's, please,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Amanda, I remember when you brought this up last time, and I thought it was really impressive and a great idea for people to schedule a time to talk to you. How long are the calls scheduled for?
They're 15 minutes and then I block off time after as well to kind of hold a half-hour time slot. So I have enough time to send paperwork, schedule the appointment and everything like that afterwards.
Yeah.
But the
My
calls themselves are typically 15 minutes.
Great. And so the other question I have is totally your opinion on this. Do you feel that part of the reason you're being so successful is because you're making more one-on-one connections and as opposed to somebody filling out a form on the website and then that going to an email?
Yeah, I mean, I think psychologically speaking, it even is they've scheduled something so they kind of aren't just filling out a bunch of forms. And so that I think to me is more likely they get reminders, it's on their calendar as well. So they're not forgetting who we are even. I've definitely had that happen in the past when I reached out to someone who just filled out a contact form and they said like, I'm so sorry, I reached out to like 50 different people. Who are you? Um, so I think there is kind of that aspect too of just having it on their calendar. They're more likely to remember who we are when they planned on talking and that way I can get more people actually answering the phone, which is when we have our greatest success rate, with being able to talk to them one-on-one, like you said.
And then you take all that information and then you're able to send them the paperwork to fill out. So you're not actually
Correct.
scheduling an appointment at that on that 15-minute call. You're just gathering the information to send them the forms they need to fill
We are actually scheduling the appointment. Yeah.
out. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, some practices, a lot of practices schedule the appointment and then send paperwork, and then another portion of practices don't schedule until the paperwork's signed. And I just noticed that difference. It's like a practice choice.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Amanda. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it's interesting this thing about the small call, like because in Nick's practice, it's a quick call with the clinician, and that is schedulable. And then at your practice, it's a intake call with the care coordinator, that's schedulable. And it's really about working around with throwing as many things out there and seeing what works because
Mm-hmm.
there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just interesting to see what works for each practice and each population.
I'm interested also to know, and Barrett, if Nick said this already and I just missed it, the 15-minute call is with a clinician, right, to see if it's a good fit. Does the clinician then schedule the full intake appointment themselves, or is that fall back on the front desk to do?
I usually like to book the consultation during the time that the clinician has available in their schedule, and that way, it's easy as saying like, "Is this a good fit? Is this a good time? All right, we can meet at this time next week, full intake appointment."
So you're scheduling the 15 minutes at a time that might work the following week?
Yeah.
So then do you put them on the calendar or does the clinician for for the full intake?
Oh, the clinician would put them on the calendar in that case.
I see. Okay. Okay. Now that we have you back, Nick, how do you find that, like, what are the pros and how do you find that works? What are the pros and cons of this?
Well, I would say like in general or just with the new clinicians that we have coming on board and our onboarding process or just like pros and
Oh,
cons to consults or full intake appointments in general.
I forgot it was linked to the fact that some of them are new and not licensed.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean,
I
in
guess
some
in
cases,
general.
we do have some people that do call in and they're very, I want a consultation. I don't want a full intake. And so if that's the case, then I just continue with that. I mean, pros and cons with that. Pro would be obviously they get to have that first initial appointment and they don't feel as obligated to like commit to something right away. And that could be a pro and a con in a way. But a pro would be maybe they're very nervous about starting therapy. And if they do have a consultation, they know it's not going to be run through insurance, it's going to be free. Just 15 minutes of their time, see if it's going to be a good fit. So obviously not obviously, but I'd hope the fit would be better in that case. I'd say there's a lot more cons. Um,
Okay.
cons practice wise, obviously, the practice isn't going to make money off of that time. The appointment is being booked for 2 weeks now instead of just the one, because it's the first is not making money, and then the first intake is going to be booked a week after, which would be the one that it would be run through, at least at our practice, through insurance. Um,
Right.
uh, and more cons. I mean, yeah, and that might upset the clinician. It might not. It's either way. At our practice, we make them do the intake paperwork, kind of in order to have the consultation phone call. So it's
Ah,
kind of a buy-in a little bit
ah.
there. So they're not just showing up and not having any sort of buy-in at all, because then that's not how you convert clients efficiently. Um,
This is really interesting. Yeah, because I can see I can see some pros and cons to that as far as process wise. Yeah, that's really interesting that you do have them do the paperwork. And then is it more, yeah, because I was wondering I was wondering for you, because I'm always concerned with like what's the client care coordinator's responsibility to track versus what is the clinician's responsibility to track and have success with. So when do you need to track whether they showed up for that 15 minute? And do you like, is that in your court?
Yep. I mean, at our practice, the clinicians have control over their own schedule and they're able to move around their clients however they see fit. So they know that as much, you know what I mean? And the stuff they don't know, the admin side of things, that's why we like to complete it beforehand so that they know when they do schedule that first intake appointment, they're cleared for service in terms of insurance is verified, they're notified about how much their copay is and where things are at there, and as well as all the treatment consent forms are signed. So they go ahead and take that client and just make their own schedule. And that's why I like to put it in that a spot that's open because they don't even have to really do anything cumbersome. They just have to go in. We use Simple Practice as a VHR, and then they just go in there, create the create the appointment for next week, and it's easy as that.
Okay, then my sales brain wants to know who is tracking like the client conversion. Like are you tracking whether they showed up for that 15 minute and booked the next session? Like do you mark them as lost if they didn't?
And that's why I was saying before, I just consider after that first consult call, if they do schedule a first intake appointment, I would consider that converted because they've met the clinician. They've said, okay, this is a good fit. This is something I want to try. And they hopefully they show up for their first appointment.
Right. So if they booked so you're tracking if they showed up to the 15 minute
Yep.
and you're tracking if they didn't book the next the full you're
Yeah.
marking
And
it, are you marking it as lost if they don't if like they meet the clinician and they don't book the full intake?
yeah, I would consider that just like a lost client because we didn't convert them in a way where they rescheduled a new appointment.
Yeah, this is really interesting from a process perspective. So you have that information is getting back to you somehow. Like you know from the clinician if they showed up or not for the 15 minute and if they scheduled.
Yeah, it's either that or I go in to our CRM and I take a look at their chart and I see they've had their first appointment. So I go into our EHR and then see if they've rescheduled an appointment there. And if that's the case, then they are converted. Sometimes the clinicians let me know, but that's usually you know some of them. So it's kind of up to me to have to find that information out either on that platform or the other one or getting told somehow.
Yeah, so you have a way to track even without talking to them.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that is like, that's great. I think that's imperative, right? Like once the ball is handed off to the other teammate, let's say, I
Yep.
don't know about my analogy, it's really imperative that you don't have to rely on them to like reach out to you through G chat or email or bump into the clinician in the hallway. Like it's really good when you have a source of truth so you can know what the result was. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for
Definitely.
sharing that. Thank you. I would love to hear from CW. Matthew, how have the conversations been going? What headlines do you have this week?
Well, I think that I like when it comes to the intake scheduling, I think I'm doing pretty well because I just did one today and I was like, man, I'm in the flow. I I like it was pretty quick. I think I got it down to like 30 minutes,
Okay.
which was pretty nice. I mean, I think I can definitely feel like there's a lot less double checking in the manual that I have to be doing. Which I so I think I'm getting pretty good with regards to that. That's the headline so far. I mean, I was on vacation on Sunday, so I wasn't here. So this is my first day back in about 4 or so days, or well, since Friday.
Okay.
But and I mean the I think Friday my Friday was mostly spent on the billing concerns, and I think I let's see, I got a lot done then, but there's always more to do, obviously. So there's not much of a change with regards to that. I'm still figuring out like the flow. I mean, I go have a good flow when it comes to the copays, and I feel like I'm pretty good at explaining the process. But like a lot of it just exists in my head. So it is needing to be written down. So that's a work in progress. But as far as the what's it called? Like the intake part, which is like going forward is going to be more of my responsibility with, all the people
Mhm.
leaving.
Mhm.
That I think I'm getting better at that. There's just like a few more I guess gaps in my knowledge that I'm still working on. But I it's my understanding that I have been here for about 2 months now,
Okay.
a little over 30 days. So that, sorry. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
that
we're
like,
next to each other, so
yeah, sorry.
it's
I,
okay.
when I'm hearing noises, it just distracts me. But it's okay. So, okay. What was I talking about?
So the,
Uh,
yeah, no, no, I was curious how just the balance of the billing work and the intake
yeah.
scheduling has gone, and you've been doing a bunch of billing work Friday-ish,
Mhm.
but you were able to kind of have a full conversation and schedule someone for intake.
Yes. Yeah. I like that was today. Like I mean, I definitely still feel like I'm not much of a fan of like calling people. Like I can answer the phone. But like I'm not the biggest fan of calling out yet. I'm still working on that, but there's been like I mean like there was like someone that we've been like trying to going back and forth trying to schedule for a while, and I found a spot on the calendar for them, and I just called them. They answered right away, and I was like, "Hey, does this work?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Cool." And then I just put it in the system. Boom, 30 minutes scheduled, everything double checked, all the forms uploaded. So that I felt pretty good about that. That was like a
Great.
couple hours ago. So
Great. And I remember, I think at your practice, there's a lot of redistribution of responsibilities right now, like where there's
yes.
be because people are leaving by the end of June. So I
Mhm.
think that is important to navigate, like who's doing
Yeah.
what, who's best at, who likes to do which things, who's excels at each thing, and
Yeah.
what needs to be done, whether you like to do it or not, like throughout
Yeah,
the whole
exactly.
week, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I know there's a whole restructuring going on with that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the billing stuff is going to become less of my responsibility in the future. And I'm going to be doing more of the intake stuff. And my schedule is probably going to change, but I'm very flexible. So it's that's we'll see how
Yeah.
that works out. But yeah,
Well, I'm glad you had that successful call, that 30-minute call to book somebody.
yeah,
And I think like it would be good like to get like when I can even talk offline with Stacy and and the whole practice kind of helping to arrange what would be the best, what would be like the overview of intake and what would be helpful on who's doing what. The only reason we have that opportunity is because you'll be switching to Admira and we have to talk about that anyway. So
yeah,
we can kind of talk about, who does what at each stage, but really that's good
mhm,
that you're feeling better on the about the call and that you booked somebody. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Then I won't worry about your KPIs. You don't have KPIs today, right?
I don't
That's fine.
have access to that. I'm sure they'll give it to me soon, but I don't have it
Yeah.
right now.
No, that's totally fine. Cool. Well, if Stacy pops off and she has headlines, we can let her go. But in the meanwhile, I just wanted to I wanted to talk about the a little bit of uh setting expectations with clients on the call because we to kind of think about how do we in sales it's called overcoming objections, right? And in healthcare it's like, well, they don't want to do virtual, so what can we do, and but that is an objection. So for example, so I want to talk a little bit about ways to proactively overcome the objection before they even say it, and how we could do that for different types of reasons they wouldn't book. And then we'll dive in even more next week on this. But tell me if I'm missing any. We've got the therapist they want isn't available. I'm just gonna list off, right? the time slot they want and the day and time does not work for them. They don't want virtual. You don't take their insurance, or they don't have insurance, right? And those availability insurance, virtual, and the therapist they want, those are probably the four I can think of. Any other reasons that are your real big ones that people just don't move forward? Okay. Not really. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, yeah, because what what can you do? So, I always want to emphasize that whenever they have an objection, the only you can just hang up the phone and say, "Okay, find somebody else," or "I'll refer you out," or "Sorry, it didn't work," right? But if you believe that there is a therapist who's a good match on your team, like on your clinical team, then why not ask again? Like it can't hurt, to encourage them one more time to try. And I also want to say that that has to be really the bar, that has to be the criteria before you do, push them one more time with an encouraging question. Like before you ask them one more time, because you don't want to try to book somebody just to get the numbers higher. Like even though our conversion contest is going on this month and we want to increase conversion from last month, it's the reason to do it. The reason to try to overcome their objection is always because there is a good match therapist on the team. And if there isn't a good match therapist on the team, it's unethical to book them for an intake. But maybe it's also unethical not to ask one more time and encourage them. Like if you do have a really good match therapist that really could help and heal them, maybe it's your obligation, or maybe it's the right thing to do to kind of try to just find one more way to get them scheduled. Do you know what I mean? So that's the spirit with which I approach this, not like let's just see how we can persuade them to book an intake session at all costs. Because also that's not good for anybody. If it goes badly, you wasted the therapist's time, you wasted their time, you wasted your own time. Like the whole point is if you do feel like there is a good fit therapist. So that's always the standard. So I think one of the hardest ones is um, if they don't take if they have insurance and there's nobody with availability at your practice. It's very hard to convince them to pay out of pocket. Like, would any of you want to pay out of pocket if you like if you also had insurance that covered it? Very, very difficult. So I think there still is a way to ask for that, but it's the least likely that it would turn out, right? But so I feel like if you're trying to ask someone to do private pay because because there is a great fit therapist, but they don't take that person's insurance, like you might ask your practice owner if you can offer a sliding scale option, and maybe the sliding scale option is really just whatever the pay fee for service fee is plus and minus $20. You could say, I actually do have somebody that's I think would be great for you. I know they don't take your insurance, but you mentioned to me that you were having trouble, your child was having tantrums at school. And I know that this therapist has had great success with children who have tantrums at school. So remembering what they said to you, reminding them of that reason they're calling. And then you could say, would you be open to exploring a private pay option? You know, I know you've called a lot of places so that we could get you in on Wednesday. So and we have a sliding scale. So that's probably the very hardest one to do, but there is a formula for that. It's reminding them why they're calling, letting them know about the value that the clinician provides, and then asking one more time. Like that is the formula. So that's probably the hardest one. Does anyone have a sliding scale option? Has your practice told you that they have that? You have that? Amanda, sort of. Okay. It could be something to say. Um, the availability one it sounds like it would be impossible because we can't create time, but I actually think availability boils down to priorities. And so sometimes people will bump things off the calendar if they really feel like this is the priority and this is going to make a difference. So, when you are, there's two things that I want to say about availability. So, the when you're about to check the calendar, you can always kind of set expectations that this slot they want may not be available before you tell them, especially if you know it's not available, right? So I think the formula is very similar. You're saying to them, actually, I have some great therapists in mind who can help you with XYZ, the problem that they came in with. What are some typical like words people will use for why they're seeking therapy? Amanda, just like anything they say, like, and it can be two words.
Of why they're seeking therapy?
Yeah, like why they're calling to book.
I guess our big one right now is probably anxiety and depression.
Okay. So, see, super simple. I'm not saying we need to diagnose people over the phone in a 15-minute call at all. So, it would be something like, I know you're calling in because, or thank you for sharing with me that you're struggling with anxiety and depression. I actually did find two therapists on our team that I think either one would be a great fit for you. Now, Amanda, before I go into the calendar, I just want to let you know a lot of the time there is a chance that the time slot they have available may not be ideal for you because they're in very high demand. But if we are, I just want to set that expectation. So if we are able to find you with someone that really could help with depression and anxiety, would you be open to taking maybe an inconvenient time slot at first and then moving into one that's better for you just before I go into the calendar because that might be able to happen. So if it were you, what would you say back to that?
Yep,
Okay. Okay. Like, all right, we've set the tone. We might
yep.
not have the right spot. And then when you deliver the time slots, you can give them the either or. Like I have, Sally's available at 4 on Wednesday or Jessica's available at Saturday at 9 a.m. Which one of those would be ideal for you? And that way you can sort of set that expectation and let them know that may not happen. So at least it's not just ending on the like, we've got Friday at 5. Does it work for you? No. Okay, bye. Like, just always one more little way to to ask is I think really important. Um, does another thing that does that happen especially with kids? Like, do you notice that often with kid? Like, is that they all want the after school time slot, right? Have you had at your practice, Amanda, like ever somebody that takes an inconvenient time slot and then is really happy that they did because the therapy works out well? Like, has that ever?
I haven't heard back, but we get a lot of them that they stick with us, so it's obviously a good fit. So I say yes. We obviously try and find something that if it's not after school, at least maybe around lunchtime or something like that. But yeah, generally speaking, the parents will prioritize inconvenient times to get in quicker versus I
Yeah,
need to call someone else. Yeah.
versus I need to call somebody. Yeah.
Yep.
And well, even though like you haven't, the proof is in the pudding, right? They're still coming to their recurring sessions. Like, not that you
Hmm.
heard back on a phone call, but is that something you ever, I want to like let everyone know this. Is that something you ever like bring up on a call? Because I don't know. I think so I think I suggest to you, because there's a strategy called social proof. The strategy for anything is for you're trying to persuade someone or enroll someone in anything, you rather than like taking your word for it, you could actually use that and say, I've talked to a lot of parents who have booked a time slot for their kid in the middle of the day and they keep coming back because the therapy is effective. I see that they're still at that time and they're glad they didn't have to call around to other places. You
Mm-hmm.
know, would you be open to doing 1 o'clock with so and so? You know, so I think that is just one sentence and it's not a lie. It's true.
Yeah.
Like you've seen it happen that you can say. You can like use that as a strategy.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like, don't take my word for it. I see it happening. Nick, do you have kid therapy, children's therapy at your practice? Kid therapy, children's.
No worries. Yeah, we do see children a little bit as young as like 6 or 5. So pretty wide spectrum of ages.
Okay, got it. And have you ever had the scenario where they don't want to take a inconvenient time slot?
Oh, definitely. Yep, all the time. During the day, and like you said, that's what I do say. I incorporate something that's like, oh yeah, I mean, you're reaching out. This is a spot. Why don't you see if it works? If it's a good fit, you can continue working on that way or with the clinician, and then hopefully somewhere down the line, you might offer them kind of like hope that their spot could change, which it very well could. And you say like, oh yeah, like, the clinicians are in charge of their own schedules, so they're able to move around their clients. If in the future, you know what I mean, something opens up that's more uh, it's definitely better for your schedule. I'm sure you can talk to the clinician about that and work something out where your spot would move to a more ideal time for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's great. And there's sometimes there's nothing you can do, right? But if we try to share that option with them, at least we're giving that prospect a shot to get the care they need to become a client. You know, because there's a few things that make a big difference that we may not realize go a long way, Matthew. I know I've said this before, Nick, but the minute you say someone's name, Stacy, like all of a sudden, boom, like their ears perk up, right? And I didn't say that to call you out, Matthew or Stacy or Nick. Just you inserting their name can really create a bond in a very fast way, especially when the phone is ringing and you have 15 minutes. Some people respond well to like a very specific story. Like if they're hesitant and you say, I actually talked to a mom that was also hesitant, that actually resonates a lot with people. It actually depends on their personality. Some people care about social proof and other people don't. But that's another level, like determining their personality before you say social proof or if you relate to them. So something you can always say is I hear that you've been calling a lot of places. You know, and then you have two choices. I relate, or I actually had someone else with the same experience as you. And it different people respond to that differently, but I'm talking about ninja moves here right now. Because typically like you're just scheduling. You're like, what do you need? How can I help you? Here's who we have on our team. Try to get them in. But if you are able to have that meta moment where you say, I actually would feel the same way, Stacy, but what I know is that Jessica on our team would be a really good fit for you. And are you open at all to trying the Friday appointment and seeing how it goes? And I'll let her know in the notes that you're hesitant about Fridays or something like that. You know, so it's better than saying, does it work for you? Because does it work for you? It's actually better never to ask a yes or no question. It's always better to use a how statement. How would it feel for you if I booked you on Friday? Like, how would it feel for you to try this appointment virtually instead of in person? After you've told them about someone you knew that was hesitant as well and had good success. So it is not natural though. Like if I was on the phone and like that person is live, I'm probably going to say we have a great therapist. She does do virtual. Would that work for you? But if you can maybe this week try at least once to like reprogram your muscle memory to say, how would you feel about booking that virtually this week? And I'll let them know that you have hesitations about that, but how would you feel about giving that a try? And you might get a different response. You might. Like that is just another tactic. So get ready because next week we will practice these things. I'm just telling you some strategies today that I want to share with you. Any thoughts on that? Does it sound like really foreign to do that? Does it
No, I
sound
find that connecting, not even just for, I did this with someone recently, or, I found it worked for me, but even when someone calls in a panic because something happened, there have been several people this week that I've had to validate, right? Because something crazy happened, or
Mm.
because they were late for an appointment and got a late charge and they were worried about the late charge and kids and running them from place to place to place. I feel that those connections calm people, make them more willing to hear what you have to say, you know, not rushing them to get off the phone if you don't have to. I have kids. I totally get that with all the running around and everything else, and why you were 20 minutes late because you came from where. Maybe there's a let's reschedule for a time where you don't feel you might be so much. How does this date work? We have this available. So I do feel that personal connection. The same way I was talking to Amanda earlier about talking to people on the phone versus having them
Mhm.
send in
Oh, right.
forms, right? It's making that connection, and it doesn't have to be big, just a little thing. I totally get that. That happened to me last week. Let's see what we can do to make it work for you. That kind of thing. So
Yeah,
that's
and
how
then
I feel.
instantly you're right. Then it's like even when you shared that example with me, it's like instantly you're I'm talking to a human. Like instantly it's like someone relatable. It's not just like a this you're not just a vehicle for the schedule, like or a vehicle to check the insurance. Like all of a sudden validating can really calm any dysregulated person down just saying that you hear them. Yeah. I think that is most important. And like you said, Stacey, it can be done quickly because y'all don't have 45 minutes to be talking about someone's situation. I mean, maybe it does get to that sometimes, but that's not ideal. So I'm trying to give you things that you would change that are not time consuming, that would small but would make a high impact. So like Stacy said, like I get it. I have kids. I would feel that way too. Let's move them to the next, then let's move on to the next step. Yeah. So there's three actually. There's three options to start with. Those three options are I hear that you are upset. I hear that you've been calling everywhere in town. I hear you. The second option is based on the situation, I would feel that way too, or I actually do feel that way about virtual sessions. I understand, like I relate to you. So I hear you, I relate to you, or I know what you're saying. I talked to someone with the same situation. So those, you don't do all three. Like one of those is a great way to make a connection with somebody to then go to suggest something else that to book them for a session that may not be ideal. So that's like the very, very first part. Um, and okay, we're coming to the end of this meeting, but ask your practices if there are sliding scale options. For when you are, or if you can position your actual full fee, just position it as sliding scale, like plus or minus 20, even if it's just your full fee, the full fee you charge, um, which is definitely the hardest one. But the truth is, like, if you have somebody that's not going to take that time slot or not going to take that virtual, and 10 people out of the 50 that call are just like, no, you might ask them again and give them a little bit of encouragement one more time. And 9 of those might still say, no, thank you so much and goodbye. But one of them might take you up on it. And that's actually success. Like, sorry, like having 9 no's and 1 yes because you tried again is actually success. So that would move the needle on conversion. Again, if it's an ethical thing, you do have someone to to match them with who's good. So that's my philosophy, is just why not ask again? Like, why not ask one more time? Yes. So that is the foundation for that. I think objections to virtual are a whole other thing. I've been hearing a lot of people getting objections to virtual lately. Is that still one of the biggest ones for you? For if they like need in person, or how is that? Not so much, Amanda. Stacy, do you guys do virtual?
We do a lot of virtual. Not everybody's open to it. I will tell you that if given the choice, I would prefer to be in person. So I would be somebody who would need to be convinced, because I've done both, right? So
Mhm.
I come from experience um, with both sides of it. But I think that convincing people who expect to come in person to do virtual can be a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, it can. I feel like that's another one that can be a big challenge. And so it's probably going to be like if you suggest it, I think with virtual, instead of doing the I don't want to call it a compliment sandwich, but the sandwich of like, you're calling in because you said you're experiencing grief. I have someone who's really great at grief, who's really great at grief. Oh yeah, yeah. Who has worked with helped a lot of clients through their grief successfully. That person is virtual. How would you feel about booking a session with them? And I would let them know you're on the fence about that. But that is a way you could do that. There's another thing is though, you could just say, instead of saying the value of the therapist, you could always mention the value of virtual, which is, I know it's not ideal. I actually would be hesitant about virtual as well, but our clients who see therapists virtually, they actually miss their appointments less, and therapy is most effective when you do come regularly. So how would you feel about giving it a try? You know, and I don't want you to feel like salespeople. I just want to give you a way to ask again and be totally fine if they say no. Like it's not a failure if they say no. It's just like a encouragement for them to get care. So try out those things this week, and I want to send you little scripts between now and then. I'll probably post and email some bullet points with these, so that even if you take one of these tactics with you, I want to hear how it goes, and like hopefully one of them helps when you're on a call. And we'll dive in more in the first week of July. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anything else that you want to make sure we cover in Client Care Mastermind, or any other questions or thoughts outside of this? You are you're fighting the good fight, like with all your systems. I know CW, you have a lot of different systems going on. Nick, your internet is freezing. I don't know what's going on, but it's cool. You've got those. Thank you for sharing about the 15-minute option, Nick. I actually think that's really interesting about your practice. And then I know, Amanda, you're training somebody else at the same time. So good luck with that. If I don't see you, have a wonderful summer, Amanda. And then let's otherwise reconvene next week at the same time.
Hey Barrett, can you stay on with me for just a minute
For sure.
at the
Yeah.
end?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. If there's nothing else, have a great week, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Matthew. Bye, Amanda. Bye, Nick.